Good evening, everybody. Crowd. So we're going to change the format of tonight's meeting a little bit. Originally, we were planning on having the official Planning Commission meeting. We had a couple last-minute dropouts in terms of attendance for the Planning Commission themselves. So that means we can't, by law, have an official Planning Commission meeting. However, it was very last minute, and we want to make sure that we are able to kind of share this information, get some of your feedback. The Planning Commission meeting will still take place the next month. We have the schedule posted out here a couple different places for July, so you're welcome to come there as well. So what we're planning on doing tonight is I'm going to hand the mic over to Greg.
Hold on. So the people that we came to speak to are not here.
That's correct.
So you think we're going to continue with this? Why don't you, this would be the proper solution to the problem. It's an inconvenience that we're here, right? So
Kara, I'm going
to talk to them, not you.
Well, I'm going to stop right there. Here's the deal. This is an opportunity for you to share your thoughts and feelings. If you don't want to be here, you're welcome to come in July's Planning Commission meeting. And I'm also going to tell you this, is that the goal of this is to be a team, to kind of walk through this, to give you all the opportunity to share your thoughts. If it's going to be disruptive, this doesn't have to be an official meeting if we end it.
Can you make another meeting because the people that are supposed to be are not here? So
Sure, July.
You can listen.
It's July.
No.
The Planning Commission is already scheduled to meet in July to consider this. It was always on the schedule.
So there was two times. The people were asking me how many.
If necessary. But so we know that the July meeting is already happening. That's when people can come.
What I'm saying is you're taking a meeting away, then you're doing this half-ass whisper down the lane so you can tell people, no,
Scott, no.
I'm tired of this, dude. This is so silly.
Because number one, this is out of order. Number two.
There you go. Out of order, dude.
All right.
I don't care.
You waste our time.
No, we're not wasting your
You
time.
are.
No,
it's bullshit. I'm so sick of this.
Leave, that's fine.
You think this
Or
much
you
of
can
our
stay
time?
and participate.
Participate in what? Is this official? Is this official?
What we could have done tonight is just cancel the meeting when we
Then
didn't
do
have a
it and
quorum.
put this
But
behind
you're
the
still
July
having the
meeting.
opportunity to provide staff with the comments. You will also have an opportunity to provide the Planning Commission with comments at the July meeting.
No.
That
You're
is-
taking a
we didn't
meeting.
want
You're
you
giving
all-
us a meeting.
You can yell all you want.
Okay,
We
cool.
didn't want people to come tonight who had already set aside the night and walk up to see a notice posted on the door and then not have an opportunity if they set aside
No,
this
that's
night.
great. You can talk to the people that are going to stay. That's awesome.
We
What
are
I'm
going
saying
to
is
do
the
that.
official meeting that was on it, you need to no?
Yes, July.
There was nothing that they could do.
There
On
was-
July,
there
we're
is.
going to continue
Correct.
having a
There
meeting.
was nothing that they could do.
No.
If there's a
People here,
Ma'am, I'm talking to them. Thank you.
no, but I
Ma'am.
am a member
Now
of
you're
the
cutting
planning.
off a member of the Planning
I
Commission.
Hold on.
am a member of the
Please.
So
planning.
do you
cannot
think
tell her to
where are the
stop.
rest of the people?
Kara, I'm going to have to ask you to go because
No.
we're going to continue this meeting. And honestly,
It's
at this
not a
point,
meeting.
we
Are you giving
have
us-
not even
Do you
gotten
agree
5
that we
minutes into
should
this
have
meeting.
another meeting in place
We
of
have
this
not
one?
gotten into 5 minutes in this meeting, and we're already getting screamed at. So you are welcome to leave.
I am.
In July,
This is honestly a
in
joke.
July, we will continue to have
You guys are
the next Planning Commission meeting.
in place of this one?
So the way the process for this works, the goal of this is that the Board of Supervisors during the last meeting voted to pass off basically approved that the proposed draft ordinance get passed to the Planning Commission for their review. It doesn't really matter what happens now, next month, the next month, and all of these meetings are planned a year in advance. So that the Planning Commission is going to meet in July, which was already planned. If they don't finish their review during that time, they'll do it in August, which is already planned, which is already posted on the website. If they don't do it then, they'll meet in September. So once a month. Every meeting is a public meeting. Every meeting, the public has an opportunity to come and listen and provide their input. Every single one.
I think we should be clear based on this. We were anticipating in our schedule. Who gets here?
Joe, I'm sorry about that. Well,
Anticipating in the schedule that based on the public interest or based on the questions of the Planning Commission or questions they had for staff, that we may need 2 meetings. So we put it on the schedule to have this go across 2 meetings. If the Planning Commission actually was able to convene tonight and they were done with their business tonight, they could choose to make their recommendation. There is no requirement for this to go any further than 1 meeting. But we're planning in the schedule to allow multiple meetings if the Planning Commission so chooses. So given that the Planning Commission can't convene tonight because we didn't have a quorum, we'll certainly convene in July, and if the Planning Commission needs another meeting, we will provide another meeting for the Planning Commission to continue their review of the zoning ordinance. So this isn't cutting anything off. This isn't reducing the number of meetings. This was just more of a planning function on the calendar. So
Yeah, I appreciate, my name's Joe Ferrero. I appreciate the fact that the planning commission is a voluntary board. People have lives. It's the middle of summer, you've got stuff to do. Is this being, you're taking a Q&A tonight.
Mhm.
Is this being recorded for YouTube posting so that if commentary tonight is made, then we don't have to run over the same ground again?
So originally we were not planning on posting it. It is being recorded so that we can do it, but I would actually say, because of your question, I don't think it's a problem if we post this so that anyone who was not able to attend tonight, so the planning commission who was not able to attend tonight, is able to hear any of the comments that are shared tonight. So it's all good.
The members of the planning commission, while it's not an official meeting, they can gather some of the input from the people who have decided to stay, and they can make more measured
Yep.
judgments.
Absolutely.
this recording was always going to be available to the members of the planning commission.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Are they gonna have a meeting tomorrow night?
Yes, they are meeting tomorrow night, but that doesn't involve what we were meeting for tonight. That's a different body. That's a different agency. So the zoning hearing board meeting was tomorrow night.
I thought there wasn't gonna be a zoning meeting tonight.
Tonight is the planning commission. The planning commission was supposed to review the proposed zoning ordinance. Tomorrow night is the zoning hearing board.
Okay. That is a separate agenda.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't know people's names.
My name's Brian Keating, I'm from Eagleville.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, I try to attend as many meetings as I can, unfortunately, some of them I can't make.
I am going to start passing the microphone that way. I want to make sure that you are able to get on the recording.
I would like that happen. Good evening, my name is Brian Keating, I'm from the Eagleville section of the township. I've lived here a long time, I don't have to keep telling everybody that, it's been over 38 years. We had anticipated that several people here are here concerned about what we saw and read in the draft proposal submitted, well, it was dated March and not submitted to the township representatives of the Board of Supervisors until the day of the meeting. That's a disgrace. That's a lapse in time, okay?
I'm not sure what's dated March, but
If you look at it, it's dated, the initial zoning draft is dated March of 2026. Why did it take a month and a half to get to the Township Board of Supervisors?
Brian, you might be confused because it's gone through multiple iterations. So I think roughly the first iteration was created on the date that you mentioned.
Right?
We saw that, we provided comments, they incorporated the comments, and we only got the commented version back the day of the meeting.
Okay, so I have
That's what the conversation was. So
okay.
we've gotten it.
Why were the appended dates not attached to the bottom of the document?
it's a draft document.
I'm going
There are no
to, just because we're
associated
going to.
Okay, the other question I have, since Gary brought it up, is obviously this draft was presented to the Board of Supervisors, is that correct? Okay, so you guys had a review of that, correct?
Right.
Is there a record of discussions? Is there a recording or records of discussions between the supervisors concerning the draft?
The only time that the supervisors discussed it among themselves was at the public meeting that was held to authorize this process to move forward.
Okay, thank you. I have another concern. I mean, I looked through all 220 pages of the initial planning commission dated March 2023, I believe, is when that was submitted. There are several conflicting descriptions and points of interest that are mentioned in the draft that were not mentioned in the 2023 proposal of the Planning Commission, okay? I have a concern, and I think a lot of people do, with the added both descriptions as well as zoning.
I don't know if, so I think if we're going to get into substantive comments on the draft, I think it would make sense if we go through the presentation, so maybe we can explain some
Okay.
of that. If there were any more questions about tonight how we're working tonight or why tonight's being held in this format. I think, but Brian, we do want to hear from you,
Yeah.
but give us a chance to give the presentation, and then we can talk about the specifics about things that you find may be conflicting.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say in the beginning of this meeting, because I will say stuff at the end after
Sure.
reviewing it, that there are plenty of great things in the new zoning ordinance. A lot. There's a tremendous amount of really good stuff that'll benefit older people, young people, sidewalks, curbing. There was so much stuff in there that will be good, but there were several things in there that we don't need. And the previous citizens and residents' inputs did not want. Okay, so I'm just going to state that in the beginning of my statement. The other thing I want to ask is, since this has not been a formal meeting, I'm requesting that any decisions be put off for an additional month.
There will be no decisions tonight. We don't even have a planning commission.
It's scheduled for October. I was told at the Board of Supervisors meeting, there will be a minimum of 5 meetings concerning discussions on this.
There was a draft schedule that we announced at the Board of Supervisors meeting, and I think that was reiterated this past week, past Thursday at the Board of Supervisors meeting.
And I was told there'd be a decision in October. I'm suggesting or motioning that it's be put off till at least a month past that.
Do you mind if I hop in here? Just because I totally hear you. So the purpose of the draft schedule is the only thing that is set in stone on that draft schedule was tonight and the next meeting, which was the planning commission meetings. Everything past that is really subject to 10,000 different factors. It's whether or not the planning commission has substantive comments that might take a long time. It depends on if the Board of Supervisors is even prepared to hear it in the fall. I think what we were presenting was to give the public an idea of how this process could play out. So that October date was never really set in stone to begin with. And so knowing that we're not meeting with the Planning Commission tonight, I'm not even sure that's realistic at this point. So I hear you. I think we're going to take that comment. That's a good first comment. And we'll take that feedback. We don't want to rush this process. And that's one of the reasons why, despite not being able to hold the meeting, the official Planning Commission meeting tonight, we're still here talking. So we're going to continue that into July. If we need to continue that into August, we will. But for tonight, the kind of format that we're hoping to lay out is Greg's going to give kind of a high-level presentation on the zoning ordinance as a whole, after which we're going to invite every individual, whoever wants to speak, to come up. Our request is that, obviously, we try to be respectful. We have a team here. We've worked quite hard on this over the course of many years. Brian, I really appreciate your comments about saying like there's a lot of good stuff in here, and we really do feel like there's a lot of good stuff. And this is our opportunity to see if we've missed anything. We spent a lot of time in this document. It wouldn't be surprising if there's a couple things that we can improve. That's what we want to hear about.
I'll just close that by saying we also want to see what we don't need in there.
100%, and that's part of this process. So afterwards, we'll invite you to come up. We have our experts here to give some feedback on your comments. Like I said, we're hopefully not going to be here until 2 a.m. I don't think we will be, but we'll hopefully keep this pretty conversational. So I'll hand it off to Greg and.
Can I say one thing?
Sorry, Susan.
My name is Susan LaPena. I live at 332 River Road. I've lived there for 39 years. I've been on the Planning Commission since 2009. I was on my way here. I prepared for tonight. And as far as I'm concerned, I continued on my way here because I view this as an educational opportunity for everybody to understand what is being proposed. I mean, I thoroughly looked at the zoning map, put my own notations on, like where Arcola Road Bridge is, where 422 is, where 363 is, where the major roads are in the township, just to recognize what developments they're talking about. And there's a lot of existing development in Lower Providence, and what we do mostly is redevelopment. Most large parcels of ground have already been developed. And so we're looking at redevelopment. How do you redevelopment? How do you keep the business park occupied? That's what we're doing.
Yeah, great. Thank you. All right, so without further ado, let's get through the presentation. It shouldn't take that long, and then we can kind of get into questions and comments. Would you like 3?
Prefer to have 0. All right. Well, thank you for your patience as we kind of, set the stage for this evening. We have this presentation. I'll walk through it on the zoning rewrite draft. And this is basically how we're breaking it down, kind of a discussion of our current zoning, a little overview of the new draft, which I know many of you have, or all of you have probably read or at least perused in some level of detail, a kind of a how-to on how the new draft is designed to read and how it works, and then the next steps, which we've had a preview of already. So the current code is a very traditional zoning code. The Lower Providence adopted zoning in 1950, was it? 1955? Which was at the outset of zoning in this area, and it's been amended many, many, many times over the years. The last time, about 19 years ago, the last comprehensive update was done, but still using the original framework from 1955 and kind of what we lovingly refer to as Frankensteining it together to try and make it work for the evolution of the township and the different demands that are made on property development. There are separate rules for each district, as you can tell from both the current map and the proposed map, which we have around the room. The map is divided into zoning districts. There are separate rules for each district, and those districts tend to be what we call exclusive. They are for a single purpose. Industrial is for industrial. R1 is for large lot, single-family homes. R2 is a smaller lot. We have our manufactured home park, which I think speaks for itself, and then we have our IP, which is our office park district, and so on and so forth, highway commercial, general commercial, et cetera. Another function of the code that kind of took shape over the years is that our use definitions are overly specific. They get very, very detailed down to uses so specific as candy store or hobby shop, which are very focused on what those uses are, but don't really draw a distinction between uses or make a real case as to why those uses are set apart or provide any distinct regulation for those uses. And that goes hand in hand with our next point about the inconsistent and outdated uses. There are some descriptions in here that just don't function the way business, how residences, how development work in 2026. And it often puts the township and property owners in a difficult position on how to understand what the zoning code is requiring them to do or permitting them to do. And what the result of that is that there's been a heavy reliance on variances. We've seen the work of the zoning hearing board be incredibly, incredibly high on very, and I don't want to diminish the effort people are putting into the work they're doing on their property, but on things that the zoning hearing board shouldn't have to handle. Such as if someone wants to do a minor addition, or if they or a business wants to come in and they can't find a use that really fits neatly for their particular type of retail shop, when we have a plethora of definitions for different type of retail shop, and just because we don't have theirs, it causes confusion as to where they go and what the regulations are that for their particular business. So we've been seeing long agendas at the zoning hearing board for repeat issues that could potentially be easily solved by working on modernizing the zoning ordinance. So these, again, are some of the comparisons or the analysis of the current code. Obviously, it has a neighborhood focus, a clear separation of uses, and it's established. We've been using it for 75 years in some way, shape, or form, and everybody is used to it in some manner. However, that familiarity doesn't necessarily outweigh the benefits. The structure is outdated. It's hard to navigate. It's hard to understand exactly all the regulations that apply to your property. If you're a homeowner and you're coming in and you want to, say, put a shed in, or you want to have a detached garage on your property, understanding clearly what you can do on your property is often very difficult under the current code, because there's multiple sections you have to go to, sometimes in not user-friendly spaces within the code for you to parse out what exactly you can do with your property. The same goes for business owners. There's repetition, and part of the risk with repetition is inconsistency, because if we change it one place, we have to make sure we're changing it everywhere, as opposed to having one unified regulation for a particular point within the code. And then rigid use separation, that's talking about our business, mostly our business districts and our Ridge Pike corridor, Trooper Road corridor, as to whether those uses really need to be separated out so far as to not have an opportunity for space making, creating neighborhoods, or recognizing, like our comprehensive plan did when that was done several years ago, that there are existing neighborhoods and villages within the township where people are focused, whether it's Trooper, whether it's Audubon, whether it's Eagleville, whether it's Evansburg, that are places that people may expect to not only live, but have access to things like stores, like restaurants, like personal service shops. So that was something that is a drawback that keeps those uses very separate. And the last weakness I talked about already is that 2006 rewrite was done in a manner that caused a lot more people, especially property owners in the current R2, which is the vast majority of residential lots in the township, come to the zoning hearing board every time they wanted to do anything on their property, which is a burden both in time and finance on our residents. I think that I've kind of gone over the last section here. It slows it down. You're coming to hearings if you want to do something, and we're missing opportunities for mixed-use development and creating more housing options for people to live and continue to live and grow in place in Lower Providence Township. So to give you some background on how we've been working on this, we were actually authorized to start doing a study of the current zoning ordinance by the Board of Supervisors in 2023. So staff, a committee, the zoning working group, has been working on that review since early 2023. And that we did a full analysis starting with the impact that I was talking about on the zoning hearing board and what we were seeing on a regular basis, what was burdening the residents, what was burdening the business owners from a zoning perspective, and whether those applications that were going to the zoning hearing board had merit, whether they should really be happening, or if it's something that zoning should accommodate. And in that initial draft phase, we took a look at it and realized that we needed a comprehensive modernization of the zoning ordinance to better serve the residents, better serve the business owners, better serve the property owners, but also to more closely align with the comprehensive plan that the township and the residents and all the stakeholders put a lot of effort, a lot of time, and a lot of work into putting together. Under Pennsylvania law, our zoning has to be referential to the comprehensive plan and inspired by, and that we thought we could do a better job at more closely aligning our zoning to the comprehensive plan. So that worked for about a year and a half, and staff made an initial presentation to the Board of Supervisors, just for informational purposes as an update of where we were. We were able to reduce, and Mike, I'm going to get this number wrong, the number of districts. We went from 23 to 16? 23 to 12? 23 to 12. So we were able to reduce the number of districts to have it more clear understanding when you're in a district, what does that mean? We eliminated overlays that often cause confusion and disorientation within the zoning code. We addressed movie lots, which were a significant issue in the township. Property owners in those areas of the township that had those small lot residential parcels that were difficult to develop based on how they were zoned and get the use of their property. There were incentives for mixed use and also for adaptive reuse and affordability in certain areas with the township, including provisions for accessory dwelling units. That's an additional dwelling unit on a property under certain small format constraints. We're moving the fence provisions to zoning, which would streamline that regulation, as well as changing the setbacks, particularly in what was formerly the R2, and I'll discuss what that is now in a minute, to make it more friendly for the residential property owners in the vast majority of our township to get full enjoyment of their properties. Certainly limitations on uses that were problematic or needed to be regulated by the zoning code, including smoke shops, which is something the Board of Supervisors took up, I guess, last year or 2 years ago, and strengthening those regulations within the zoning ordinance, and amongst some other more fine-tuning of minor regulations within the zoning code. I think we can go to the next one. So, what we looked at as what we're proposing and what was posted online about a month ago, after the board authorized us to do so, was a full structural modernization. So instead of going through the existing zoning code and pulling out pieces and rearranging them, we, for the most part, with the exception of a couple sections, completely decided to rewrite the zoning ordinance. And part of that is structural. It's not just the text. A lot of the text came over. It'd be found in one logical place in the new code, but it was making it user-friendly. It was simplifying the code and making it navigable by your average person. So it wasn't just the zoning officer or an engineer that you needed to hire who could tell you what you could do on your property. The hope is that for the most of this, especially for our residents looking to what they can do on their residential property, that they can navigate the code and understand what they're permitted to do on their properties underneath the zoning. So it modernizes it, it simplifies it, pulls together regulations in a logical place, and then provides some more flexibility for property owners that where rigidity seemed to continuously create problems. So, high-level view of what we proposed here, and this is how we can walk through it. The first is we created a use matrix. If you reviewed the zoning ordinance before tonight, that is the it's Chapter 8, titled Uses. It's a large row and column spreadsheet in color coding that lists all the uses and what the definition of that use is. And then as you go across the columns, it tells you which districts those uses are permitted in and how they are permitted, whether it's permitted by a special exception, which is when you have to seek a second level approval from the zoning hearing board, whether it's permitted by a conditional use, which means you have to seek a second level approval by the Board of Supervisors, whether it's permitted solely as an accessory use, or if there is no indication it's not permitted in that district. So that leaves a first stop for all property owners to go to, and whether you know what district your property is located in, you can go down the column of your district and see all the uses that you're permitted to do on your property, or if you have a particular use in mind, if you're a business owner, or let's say you're looking to locate a use somewhere in the township, you can find that use in the matrix and then see all the districts in the township that use can be located. So it's a clear, and logical path for you to assess where those uses can be located. And it's one table for all, one-stop shopping to determine the uses. The next thing, I have water here, but yeah, I'm good. I was trying to power through. The next is some flexibility. We introduced mixed-use districts. Previously, there was one mixed-use area. It was a sector within the IP district, which is a portion of Park Point. it didn't quite function the way it was ever intended, but the concepts were good. So we introduced this mixed-use district in areas of the township that would benefit from that, what we call village focus that was introduced by the comprehensive plan. In Audubon, what I refer to as Trooper, even though it's not the true Trooper, but the intersection of Trooper Road and Egypt Road, where Audubon Square is, Audubon being Paulings and Egypt Road, Eagleville, which is this area of the township, this kind of the central area right here at Eagleville and Ridge, and expanding out. And then the last one, which is a special village district, would be Evansburg, which is the historic village. So those mixed uses are introduced in that village area to kind of bridge the gap, to have those traditionally identified areas of the township have a bit of their own village center, and support the already existing close proximity of residents and businesses functioning, and hopefully introducing more of a village atmosphere, introducing walkability in those areas. That is a focus on those uses that we believe are compatible in those areas. But also, since those areas are already developed in that way, less reliance again on variances, less reliance on going to the zoning hearing board, which was a continuing pattern that we were seeing. So after you identify your use in the use matrix, whether you identify it by the use you want to do or what you're permitted to do in your district, the next section is going to performance standards. These performance standards are based on the use. So if you want to do a particular use, after you determine where it's located, you can go to Article 10, and you can determine what the regulations are for that use. Every use is listed there. Almost every use has its own set of standards that need to be demonstrated before a zoning permit would be issued. This focuses on the impacts of every use. So we're not just looking at, if there's a problem, we're not going at it afterwards. We're looking at it proactively to ensure that if a use is proposed, the township has the necessary information up front to make a determination whether that use is going to have an adverse impact, and if how it's being proposed, we can hopefully mitigate it from the outset, as opposed to being on the back end and trying to fix a problem after it's already started. But those impact-based performance standards are primarily focused on noise, traffic, environmental impacts, and the one that I think is not listed here is the community impacts as well. There was a big focus on ensuring that when a use is going in, even if it's somewhere it's permitted by right, that there's an understanding, or at least a review and study of how it's impacting the surrounding properties. And the last high-level change to go on is our zoning district reduction. We had 23 zoning districts, which, including the overlays, which is a very high number, especially for a township of this size. And it caused a lot of confusion and redundancy. By stripping down the zoning map and starting over again, we were identifying areas that were unified in how they were developed or should be developed. It makes the ordinance easier to use. You're not wondering where things go or where things overlap, and if you're looking at a base zoning district and an overlay, and how you're navigating what that means for you as a property owner. By reducing them down, we were also had the opportunity to refocus those zoning districts to hopefully also address environmental concerns and sensitive areas. Like, for example, our large lot zoning district is now called the LDR, or low density residential. That's focused primarily where the R1 was, but it also takes an opportunity to refocus on the Perkiomen watershed to ensure that those properties are not overdeveloped going forward, in addition to those existing regulations that we have for steep slopes, floodplain districts, and those type of environmental sensitivities. Also in increasing open space. I think we're good. So these are some of the things that I think are very they were very important to the township to make sure we address, but also in the understanding that they're very important to the public, that they're addressed in some way, shape, or form within the zoning ordinance. The important thing to remember as we go through this and look at a zoning ordinance is that Pennsylvania requires us as a municipality to provide for every use. We are not able to unilaterally restrict certain uses just because we don't want them, but we are able to regulate them. So the opportunity in making sure that we are compliant with state law, that the township is not subject to a challenge, and when a township is subject to a challenge, if we were to lose that challenge because we were exclusionary in some way, a developer could have the opportunity to do what they say with a judge's order. So the proactive approach is to make sure that you are providing, so you're compliant, but also regulating to mitigate and control any impacts of any uses that may be of concern to the township or the public. But hand in hand to that, in the specific use concerns, is ensuring that the way the lay of the land is out there today is properly regulated, and the zoning code addresses that. So the first is movie lots. There's areas of the township which you may all be very familiar with, but that were established 100 years ago that have very small lots. They are undersized for development in a lot of areas of the township, and for a long time we struggled on how to properly regulate those. And property owners and the township were very frustrated with the best way to do that. What's that? It's actually various areas of the township. So there's areas along Grange. There's areas what I call Sunnyside across and behind the one set of mobile home park down Ridge, and there's actually some that are included right up here that are actually undeveloped for many of years. Hundreds across those three. Yes, I think that's easy to say. So we can get into questions, but there's easily between those three areas there are easily hundreds of movie lots. Some are developed or consolidated over time into multiple lots. But even in some instances, consolidating 4 or 5 lots still does not bring it into a compliant lot under today's zoning code. The problem is that we are still required in some way, shape, or form to allow someone to do something with their property. When we were, yes, but that. Or it's just not developed in a way that is consistent with the rest of the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan, or always friendly to neighbors. Or we find ourselves in a situation where we're going to court over the finer points and then not getting a result that anybody is completely happy with. So the opportunity here was to go in and see movie lots and say, this is how we can provide property owners with an opportunity to use their property without it being overly impactful and without digging a hole for the township in over navigating these things. So there's a zoning district that's been developed called the small lot residential that's specifically focused on those areas that contain movie lots that provide specific regulations. You'll see on these maps it's the bright red 2 areas that provide specific regulations for those areas so that people are able to develop their properties in some way, shape, or form. It encourages people to, I think, consolidate if they're able, but at the same time, sometimes you're okay. Just caught me off guard. Still work through those regulations. Next is
I have a question.
okay.
On Grange Avenue, where you're talking about the movie lot,
Yes.
and along Ridge Pike, I can see very small
Yes.
lots. But as you go south on Grange Avenue, those lots become larger. Like, why are they considered movie lots?
They're still undersized. Some of them are actually consolidated based on what you're looking at. Some of those are 4 or 5 lots that were consolidated at some point. Someone was fortunate enough to buy, 5 parcels at once and consolidate it and develop it as one
The
parcel.
ones that are like, can you bring up the map? I could show you.
I mean, we
exactly.
can always pivot back to that once we get into
All
a
right,
discussion.
but
I can
'cause
bring up the
don't know-
map.
Because they look like they're pretty big lots to me, like in this particular area right here.
Can-
Yeah.
I'll just take a quick look.
And I know this is probably the slide where people are going to get caught up on because I think this is probably hitting on a lot of
This
the
is.
concerns that and that's why there's a slide on it. Is because we want to kind of address it at the outset. There's going to be a lot of questions about it. Let's just let Greg get through these as an overview, and then once we get into discussions, we can bring the slide back up at the end. But we just want to make sure we get through the whole presentation first.
Yeah.
So hold your questions. I promise we'll get it back up here if you have more.
I'll answer this one since it's been asked. Those three are still undersized generally. They're not quite. If I remember correctly, the three on the easterly side of Grange, that's kind of inset into the institutional district, are current residential parcels that aren't. They're larger than the average movie lot, but they're not quite. Not necessarily compliant with other districts. But the other important thing is that when we're zoning, it's generally cannot create an island just based on those. So those three would be difficult to incorporate in. We wouldn't want to put them in institutional because they are currently residential lots. They don't quite fit into the intent of the village commercial, which is the next adjacent zoning district. And so you wouldn't want to just zone three parcels of, let's say, MDR. So they're still residential. The uses that are on there are located on there today would still be permitted. In that instance, those property owners might benefit a little bit because their setbacks would be reduced because they're in that small lot residential, but they're still not overly large lots. So it balances out. It was a fair.
I mean, I would call it yellow.
Right, but there's no. It's not with any other yellow, but right, the MDR.
Density,
Right.
MDR. because
Understood.
All the way from, and maybe that's why, there are too few of them to make it,
Yes. Yep.
make any sense.
Yeah.
So you would keep it, you're just lumping it together.
It's
definitely not recreational, it's definitely not institutional.
correct.
And it's not village commercial.
Right, or village center. I'm sorry, I said that
Village center.
incorrectly.
Greg, are these the kind of things you want us to make a note of, so that then?
Yeah, I think Travis is making notes of these comments so that we can absolutely review everything that's being discussed tonight. We're keeping track of so that we can discuss and review and hopefully plan a markup for the planning commission.
Again, because those three particular lots, to me, look as big or if not bigger than a lot of these ones in the yellow, the moderate density residential, MDR.
Understood. Understood. Yeah, so it's quite the endeavor to go to the level of zoning map that we currently have. This is utilizing the township's GIS programming, which we track all zoning, all code through. All the parcels are there. When we get it, once I finish the presentation, we can bring up the map and I can kind of give you an overview of the zoning map on a larger scale, give you a better idea. Attainable housing. This was something that has become a priority, I believe, for the township in incorporating a larger variety of housing types in the township to ensure that people who want to live in Lower Providence can be here, people who want to stay in Lower Providence can be here, and that was done primarily through bonuses in areas that would permit multifamily housing to add a little bit more density if attainable housing is included in those developments.
Excuse me, but are you going to encourage people to build attainable housing? Like, what's the plan for that? I like the word, like
Right.
attainable housing, like I like the idea, but not especially actually. But it feels like bullshit a little bit.
So it's
are you going to encourage builders to come in and build attainable housing, or?
So when it comes to zoning, it's not, we're not unilaterally encouraging anybody to do anything through this. It's providing a framework. If there are discussions, if there are developers interested. If the supervisors end up being interested in seeing a certain type of housing in a particular area 5 years from now that would benefit from attainable housing, hopefully the framework's there. What the zoning is identifying now is areas where that type of housing would be appropriate based on the zoning scheme, and providing.
No limits, so then you're making, I understand they're saying like you want to be there for compliance. Why are we making it easier? Because then you're gonna have just, as many people just come in and start doing this stuff all over the place.
Well, they can't do it all over the place. They can only, the purpose of zoning is the limit.
Right. Well, I don't
So by saying no,
limitations, it looks like there's actually more on every single one of these.
I'm not,
It's like you're making, well, even on R1s, like you're allowed to now have multiple houses on them, like, you know, that's just encouraging more of this, like people who rent, I guess, on their land, or actually making it easier for somebody to come in for, you know, to build multi-housing, well, whatever housing. We don't have sidewalks, we don't have transportation, we have traffic, our roads are horrendous. So, I mean, it's
It catches, the recording kicks you up, so
Oh, okay.
it's helpful so that I can actually hear you.
okay. Well, like I said,
I think it's right at the end, as you said, so.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
I
it's
waited
okay.
till the end, yeah.
It's all right. So I just don't understand why are we doing it all at once? Why aren't we addressing things one at a time as they come up? And like, you know, that makes way more sense to me.
So
Like, if you're gonna do R1, do R1. Let's all go through it and let's go through it, you know, gosh, I can't even think of the word, but like, take our time and really be thorough. And that way everybody has a chance. You're doing everything all at once. It's never good
Correct,
to
we
change
are.
everything all at once.
so we
Never
are-
a good idea.
So to address your,
Right.
your comment about that, hold on, can I please just answer the question? We are doing everything all at once, and this is
But
what,
why?
This is what, let me
Okay,
answer.
okay.
Let me answer.
Okay.
I think you came in a couple minutes late, and I don't mean that to
Right,
call
but
you
I
out
have
on
done
that,
my
but
research, I
but
have read,
but
it's
that
okay.
was what was discussed at the outset. So we are doing this comprehensively. One, because for the past 75 years we've been doing it piecemeal, and it's created a whole list of issues that can't be fixed doing it piecemeal going forward. We've gotten to a point where the zoning ordinance, and I'm going to keep on using this term, has been Frankenstein to a point where it's not functioning the way it should.
Right,
And
so
we're
what my
having-
suggestion is, why aren't we doing it like addressing each zone one by one? So you have R1, let's go through R1.
We did that.
Let's take the time.
That's
but
what we've
not-
done
but
for
you're
the
doing
past.
it all at once. You're
But that is
changing
what
it all at once.
the zoning working group has done for the past 3 years, is go through every regulation in the zoning ordinance and evaluate how it works, what does work, what doesn't work.
Right,
And
but
so-
that's all theoretical. So if we do R1 and we get to go through it as a, you know, as a community, and we say, okay, you know what, we like these changes, we're going to do that. Let's let R1 settle in and see what happens before we go and change something else. Because all of a sudden now, if we change everything all at once, well then all these people can come in and do all these crazy things all at once, and we're dealing with things that we don't even know. That's not like it's just it's unsettling and it's not going to go well.
So
and no
I-
other community is doing this, so why are we?
There are a lot of communities that do this. So
Not in the
I
area.
wouldn't say that no other communities have done this. There's comprehensive rezoning that happens on a regular basis throughout the 5-county area. So, but in 2006, the township attempted to do exactly what you're suggesting, and they did a very it was large, but it was targeted specifically to the R2, and they changed a lot of the zoning regulations in the R2, and for the past 20 years, we've seen nothing but problems and a documented list of problems of how that has been functioning.
So is that
we're
not
taking
a
the
good
information.
a good prediction of what's going to happen when you do it to all of them all at once?
So we're
Because if
taking-
you're having problems with
if-
R2
if-
when they initiated that.
Can you please let me
Okay,
respond
all right.
to you? We've
I think
taken,
I don't know if you live in the area, but I don't think it's funny. So let's.
I
go
don't
ahead.
think it's funny either.
Okay,
I think it's
then
funny that
don't.
you keep on interrupting
Okay,
me
all
every
right.
time I open
Go
my
ahead,
mouth.
but let's not get going.
The problem is that we've taken the information that's been gathered over the past 75 years, mostly within the last 15 to 20 years since that last rezoning, and seen what hasn't been working. And also what has been working, what has been functional, and synthesizing that into something that works with modern planning principles. So that to do it piecemeal would never accomplish it, because we would be then further Frankensteining this over the years. You can't just do R1 because R1 wasn't functioning as R1 the way
As-
it was. We had to look at other areas of the township to pull in different
Well, let's just pull back to
regulations
the R2
and
that
what
we were
needed.
discussing. 'Cause that
R1
was
or
what we just
R2?
said.
Okay, I'll do R2.
Well, you said R2,
Okay.
that in R2 in 2006, that the township did, that they made the changes to R2, and that ever since in the last 20 years, we've had nothing but problems. So I think the problem is that the township didn't pay attention and follow through with what they were doing, so that we could figure out what was wrong before we moved on to the next. Like, that's what we're saying. You just can't do it all at once, because you couldn't even do it at R2, but we're gonna trust you with doing it for the entire community all at once? When you couldn't even do it over 20 years, you couldn't figure out how to make R2 work?
No, it's a functional problem of doing it piecemeal that doesn't work.
But the problem is you couldn't do one zone in
Right,
20
because
years.
it was
You want us
piecemeal.
to trust you to do it with every single zone.
Because it was piecemeal.
No, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
If you can't
No, it
do one, you
absolutely
can't do it.
does.
It's always harder to do a lot of things at once than to learn one new thing.
Well, hang on a second. Now, if you just went into R2, right? Let's say you changed R2, and you said something can't go into R2 anymore.
Right.
Okay. Well, you gotta put it somewhere, right?
Right, but that's what you're supposed to be dealing with. He said you guys did that in 2006. For 20 years, did you figure that out?
No, you're not, you're
Oh,
interrupting.
okay, sorry.
So if you take something out of R1, you have to put it someplace.
Right.
So by definition of changing R1, you have to change something else, right?
Okay.
So you gotta go and change, let's say, R2.
Right.
Or the industrial thing. Now, if you make another change in R1, and maybe that one doesn't go into the same place as the other one, it goes over here. That's why fundamentally, that's what the problem is.
But the residential zone,
Please
sorry.
listen. You interrupt him, you interrupt me.
Okay.
It's not nice. We're all neighbors here.
Okay.
We should let each other speak.
Okay,
And we should all be civil with each other.
okay,
I see a lot of stuff online that,
okay,
you look at it and you're like, are these our neighbors? So let's all treat everyone with respect.
okay.
So I think what Greg is saying is that if you need to, move one of them around, you have to change the other ones. And you have to, I agree with the approach that they're using. I didn't see it until it was done. I looked at it and said, this is really good. It fixes a lot of problems that used to exist. But I want to just come back real quick to some things that I've heard, because I think you're worried that things are going to be like pushed in here, or, we're going to get a bunch of stuff. So you just mind listing what the problems are?
Well, I mean,
What are the things that you're afraid of? Is it attainable housing?
Can I talk? Okay, so,
I
no,
see.
it's just that the zoning that you've changed, it sounds like there's more additions to zonings than there are things being placed other areas, and
Well,
I don't like that.
We reduced it from 23 to 12
Okay, but, yeah.
districts.
But you're adding uses.
That's what we're saying, is that you're adding these things, right?
Right,
Right.
and one of the reasons, and, I'll let you take it back, Greg, but like with transitional housing, for example, that's one, we had to go fight a court battle to keep that out.
Aren't we in that court battle now? So why are we
Yes.
gonna make it easier?
We're not.
Like, aren't we fighting
we're not.
that? Okay, I
No,
thought we were in this
We're not making
one.
anything easier.
Okay.
We're not making anything easier.
Well, that's what he said, but we're trying to make it to where compliance in the future is easier.
Well, hang on. So with the transitional housing, because it wasn't addressed, in theory, they could have put it anywhere.
Right.
Right? They could have made that argument because we didn't have transitional housing. That, since we didn't say it has to go here, it was like smoke shops. We made sure that we put smoke shops, the legal, the dispensaries that are run by the state.
Okay.
We put all of those in Park Point because we didn't want to have those on Ridge Pike, right?
Right.
And so we gave them a place, and it was a real specific place. With the attainable housing, with the whole RHD thing, that, Greg, the township had to pay a lot of money to keep that out. That was because attainable housing was not listed. Now, to Greg's earlier point, we have attainable housing put in a place with a lot of restrictions on it. So,
I just don't want to confuse RHD and attainable housing, though.
or
They're not.
I
Yeah.
meant transitional. I meant transitional. I meant transitional. Thank
Just
you.
to be clear. Just to be
Yes,
clear.
yes. Yeah. So anyway, let me pass it back to Greg and let him continue with his presentation. But I just wanted to jump in there because I saw some confusion, and I think we should let each other speak.
Yeah.
Okay.
So attainable housing, just to add that clarity, is housing that is, it can be independent, and we know that there's opportunity for this in multiple locations in different forms, but it's in the zoning ordinance is structured as a bonus for certain housing developments that if they keep a certain percentage of the housing units that they develop under market rate, which provides which is, and attainable housing is a defined range of income based on the Montgomery. It's not low income. It's
Owned by single families or
it's
affordable housing?
it's based on a household income within a range based on Montgomery County. I think our range is it 100 to 120% of the median income in Montgomery County based on the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Authority, I believe, 80 to 110. So it can be rental, it can be owned. But the primary focus is on rental to allow people an opportunity to have accessible, attainable housing within the township. So,
You understand, everyone, you understand what we're talking about here? You're not talking about affordable housing for the average person to come in.
I am talking about the.
Buy and live here. You're talking about rentals, Section 8.
We are not talking about Section 8. Section 8 is completely different defined terminology, but it's not, because 80 to 110% or 120% of the median income in Montgomery County defined by the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Authority is a household income between 85, minimum 85,000 to about 120,000 household income. So you're looking at teachers, you're looking at the firefighters that we want to stay in our communities as opposed to moving out. You're looking at people who are working jobs that have whether it's a single or a household in that range to make sure that we keep people in the township as opposed to making everybody who's earning something come from the outside into the township to work here. It's giving an opportunity for people in an income range that if you look at those numbers, what can be afforded in the current housing stock in the township is not necessarily an available opportunity for people to live within Lower Providence.
And Greg, as I'm looking at dwelling multifamily with attainable units,
Yes.
my read of that is, and I don't know, I'm not looking at single family. I don't know if single family is here.
It's just in the multifamily section.
It's just in multifamily.
Yes.
So in multifamily, if someone wants to come in and have an apartment complex, let's say, we're allowing that. Now, most of the apartment complexes, the people, we have to. I'm not even sure. I'm more talking about the attainable housing first. Okay. Right. Now, if the apartment building owner, a lot of them are having the rentals very high. They want $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 per month rent. What we're saying is that if they want to, they can go up to like 20% of those units if they're attainable housing within one complex. We're allowing some of those to be attainable where the rent, it's going to be a smaller apartment and the rent is going to be a little lower. And in exchange for that, giving rentals for the firefighters, the EMTs, in that same complex, they can have a few of the units spread around that are a little bit smaller and lower price. So we're making it a win-win for the apartment builder to put it in.
I mean, I'm just really trying to understand. I'm, it heats me up a little bit, but I'm trying to be cool. So I'm trying to understand, though, this is being changed. I mean, something's being added right now because they can build apartments in R4, right? But so you're going to spread it out a little bit so that. But this, to me, I'm trying to understand. It only makes sense to me if like one person owns this apartment building and then there's some incentive for this apartment building owner to make smaller, cheaper units. Stick them in the basement.
Smaller.
I mean, right?
Only a small percentage of the
Small
units.
percentage, right? 20% you said, right?
Yeah.
I hear you, but I'm saying I'm trying to understand. So it's not changing for residents. We're bringing in like, a transient, more like not permanent residents. We're kind of bringing in more, renters in and out, not people that want to buy and own and live here and become permanent part of the community necessarily, possibly.
There's a lot of renters in the community that are members of the community. I mean,
sure,
I
of course.
don't think it's fair to put down renters.
I didn't mean, I'm not
I
putting.
rented for a long
I'm
time
not
when I was in
putting
the
them
military.
down.
Well, you
No, no.
are. You're saying they're not members of the community.
I didn't.
I'm going
I
to push
said
it.
transient as
Well, you call
opposed to
them transient,
permanent.
but a lot of those
I didn't
transients
mean
do
that.
good
That's
things.
not a negative. That means people that come and go rather than people that come and stay.
So
You
I
know
think
what I'm
there's
saying.
I think there's a recognition
And
that
I'm just trying to understand.
of two things. One, housing is increasingly more expensive in this area.
True.
And two, that because of the expense, that not everybody is able to own a home. So the targeted approach for providing attainable housing under this code as a bonus. So it's not a requirement, but if someone who's developing multifamily housing would include a percentage of attainable housing in their development, they could have a little more density. So they would get the benefit of a few more units if they designate a certain percentage as attainable housing, which would provide an opportunity. There are reporting requirements to the township on those. There is a function in that reporting requirement that would not allow people to overstay if they no longer qualify for the attainable based on their income. So it's providing an opportunity to access the community in some way when someone's at a certain income level. And I think the hope from everybody would be that they are invested in Lower Providence as a renter, and then they're invested once their income increases to buy a home and continue in Lower Providence.
Also, when they do it 20%, to add those 20, units and stuff, there's pay incentives for that. They get tax credits, they get federal, money from PHFA and stuff like that. So it's not like they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart. So, and then we're gonna have the township that's gonna have to go and try to maintain these things. That's gonna cost us money.
There may be programs, but for attainable housing at that income level, we're not, like I said, we're not talking about Section 8. We're not talking about what is often
But
called
you're not talking about them either, I guess. I mean,
Actually, the income level would
yeah,
exclude.
well, we would have to pay for that, I guess, foot the bill if the township had to regulate it, unless it was on a federal or state level.
Who decides who follows up, like who?
It depends on where they're getting extra money to do that. If it was PHFA, then they'd go through the state.
I'm just saying, for example, you said like once they reach a certain level of income, then you don't want them to overstay, right? So who would be the person that oversees that and determines that?
It would be enforced by the Township Code Department under Community Development.
So again, resources
So the township,
pays for it.
they're going to monitor how much those people are making? I'm a renter, let me just say, I've been here 14 years.
Welcome.
Thank you, we love it here. We wanted our children in Methacton. We sold our souls to move up into Methacton, to this district, and we have stayed. So attainable housing, affordable housing, it's not a reality here now. We are in a dump, and we stay because of the community. But that is another issue. You can't even enforce when you let these builders come in or buy these properties under certain restrictions, they don't fix them up.
We don't have that program now. We don't have any regulations on that right now.
No, you're missing the point.
So,
What
but
I'm saying is who is going to monitor my Social Security disability? Who's going to monitor, oh, my husband made, $20 extra each month in that 6-month period because he was opening pools or closing them, and you're gonna tell me I make too much money to stay in that affordable, attainable housing? I wanna know, has this worked in other communities? Has this been tried? What are the pitfalls? It's not a bad idea, but you're excluding, when you say a smaller apartment, you're excluding.
The regulation does not say a smaller apartment. I want to be clear about what you're saying, though. The regulation does not. I did not say that, actually.
You did.
But
You said smaller apartments.
Ma'am, I did not. But I will be clear that actually the regulation requires that the attainable units reflect the makeup of the larger housing development. So if the larger housing development has 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, attainable units have to be in the same proportion of providing 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments in the attainable program, so that there is a variety. It's not just the small units.
And you want people like us to stay here for years. You want this to become our home. So I'm just saying, if they're saying that only smaller apartments or less efficient apartments are what is attainable for that 20%, you're excluding families, you're excluding good people.
But the regulation does not say either of those things. So
Yeah, but
I
just
just
because
want
it
to.
doesn't say it doesn't mean it won't happen.
Okay.
That's all.
The regulation says the opposite, though, that the attainable units have to be the.
But you didn't answer the question. The township's going to monitor our our income, our pay? How often? Like, I just see, I am for attainable housing, but what you're saying, I'm not for.
If you qualify for a program that has the property owner received a benefit, then there will be some reporting requirements that will require that there is compliance with the program. Yes, just like when you receive the benefit of receiving any type of program, there are reporting requirements. Yes.
Hey, Greg,
So
let,
if
Right,
you-
but
let me ask
the
you.
there's an
township has a
annual
housing
re-
section just for that, or is that a new position that's going to be
It's not. It would.
created? Or
The code department would handle it.
how, and is my income safe with the code department? You know, like, it doesn't, who else reports to
We're
the
just gonna have
code
Mike
department with
respond,
their
and then we'll get to you.
income?
Well, you.
There's gotta be one single person.
I would
Do you mind
offer.
if I jump in here?
Go ahead.
We have the community development director. This will be the person that we're talking about who's going to oversee this, and he might be able to provide some insight on.
We're not just sending it willy-nilly to the code.
No,
department.
no.
Like, it doesn't make sense, I'm just saying, like.
I think there's been a slight oversimplification of how that would work. Yeah, no, I understand, and I'm thinking about another municipality that is a little bit ahead of us in terms of this program that I'm familiar with. While it's true that the township would monitor it, it's really, again, if the property is a rental property in which you have a property owner who's looking at people's incomes in terms of qualifications for rent. You know, basically, you have to do a credit check type of thing. Though that same entity will be looking at it and then reporting as a whole to say, okay, our 20 units of attainable housing are compliant, and they're reporting as a whole to the township. We're not looking at Mrs. Smith and then Mrs. Jones and Mr. Moore, and so we're not looking at your paychecks. We're just looking at the property owner.
Responsibility.
I'm sorry?
It's the apartment owner or the
Yes.
dwelling owner's responsibility.
Hey, Mike, what other township is doing this?
Okay, the township, I'm sorry.
What other township is doing this?
The township that I am referring to, that I'm aware of, because I'm on the planning commission in that township, is Lower Gwinnett.
And did they do, how is it working? Did they do a study on this?
It's relatively new, frankly, so I don't know that, in terms of, I'm speaking specifically about this dynamic of how you monitor. I was trying to answer the question about how we monitor the compliance with the household income thing. The county has given guidelines throughout. They have people at the planning commission that have kind of developed these standards and are monitoring them. I can check in to find out other municipalities. I'm just kind of giving an anecdotal experience.
Are you done? I do have one question, and it's not about the housing. I'm looking at this data center.
Wait, data centers is going to be.
That's going to be a hot button in this township. It's a hot button everywhere else.
And I don't want to cut you off. Can we stick on this and then I'll come back to you for data centers? Data centers is obviously going to be a topic of discussion, but I don't want to get off this until we have moved past it. So, Joe.
Stupid question. This idea of the income on this, are we going to be evicting people who become successful? That's, yeah. We're if we're going to tell. Can I make a statement? All right. We're going to punish people for making better of themselves with this. Please. They have rent control in places like New York. Is that something that would be viable here as a solution to keep people who get in and live their lives in a place that they want to be without the hassle of being evicted, ejected from our town?
We want someone who wants to be stable here long-term. How do, this planning document is both a weapon and a shield. It's a weapon for those who want to do development, to do things to our town. But it also needs to be a shield for those of us who live here. And I think when you rewrite the document, I think that we need provisions to give us the ability to shield ourselves from the guys coming in doing the crazy stuff, whether it be data centers or this idea of attainable housing. I think housing needs to be more affordable. I think we have mobile home parks here as part of that, but we need to be able to consider getting more people of normal income here. We stack the deck with a lot of mansions, with HOAs and everything else. We need regular housing stock here, and we need to encourage people living here on a starter home and a next home. That's where I'm coming from. I apologize.
Can if okay. Two responses. One is the at least in the Lower Gwynedd scenario, the developer or I'm sorry, the property owner has an incentive to try to keep the percentages. They have to keep that 20%. So it's not so much that they're evicting. It's just that when houses open up, units open up, then they maintain that maximum 20%. So secondarily, but to answer, let me go further here. To answer your question, the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 23 that kind of generated all this, there was a lot of discussion about what the planners and others call the missing middle housing, which is the housing you were speaking about, the twins, the more moderately income housing. When we got into attainable housing, that's kind of the extreme. That's more of an extreme, and that's very specific to a multifamily thing. But the broader concept of affordability to the township and to the bigger code is allowing more housing types in more areas. So twins, duplexes, smaller stuff, so that with for instance, combining a couple of these, like the movie lots, there's some opportunities there to have some zero lot line stuff, so that you don't have to you don't have to build a McMansion, which to your point, you can build a smaller house with attached so that you can make it affordable, use up this. Well, I mean, there are more provisions for townhouses, yes, but it's not going to be like rows and rows and rows. We're talking, basically two dwelling units, attached dwelling units. Yeah. So the idea with all that is more of an attainable housing, but broader in terms of affordability and a little bit less drastic, if you will. Right. So we made that provision.
The other question I have, when you make your example of the apartment building in Gwynedd, where a part of the stock, 20% of the stock, is a smaller physical plant of the apartment, that they're going for the 20%. Are we talking different size apartments in these attainables, or is everybody the same size and we're just denoting, all right, we have red, yellow, green as far as the payment there?
Yeah.
But they're all the same size apartments.
Not exclusively. We did kind of get off on that tangent, but more the latter than the former. There's not a drastic reduction in the size. I think there's some floors, but in terms of a minimum size, because you still building code, you got to still live by and stuff like that.
But wouldn't it make more sense to keep everybody the same size than radiate coming in? And then when your transition is coming through, then you get your 20%.
Yeah, that is how it does play out. So you're
Okay,
correct.
so everybody's the same size physically in the apartment. We're not shrinking like half the stock.
No.
And then saying, oh, here are the privileged apartments and here are the,
Right.
okay.
Yeah,
I
most-
just wanted
most-
to make sure that that's what the example was.
Most of the programs that I've seen, and I don't know that we've gotten to this level of detail here yet, but would account for that because it'll rotate around. You don't want to put your 20% all in this corner of your complex. Right. That's talked about, and we'll put provisions in there to not do that. We don't want that.
Higher density.
Higher density. They can get more density. If you.
Put more units on the property so they can still make the same amount of money.
Only 20% of them are gonna have to pay a little less rent.
Right. So it'll be 20%.
Somebody's gonna have to monitor it. I handle four low-income, apartment buildings, one in Delaware County, one in Chester County, two in Montgomery County. Somebody has to monitor it, because there's no incentive. I'm a property manager, I can just let them know where I'm at, I can say, hey, we're not gonna count that, we're not gonna count this, and whatever. But there's somebody I'm accountable to, I gotta do all this paperwork in, and they are very invasive. They want to know everything. They want, and they'll go through your bank statement. I have one right now that's driving me insane because there's a 4-digit, I'm trying to tell her that there's an ATM card, but she's saying, no, it's a bank account. And this poor person that is there, who is literally poor, is diabetic and losing a leg, is like just freaking out because they don't want to lose their housing. And that's literally what it comes down to. So somebody has to be monitoring it, because again, it's much easier for me to just say, oh, you really can afford it. Let's push you in here so I can just do my quota and roll an account. You're in, not the husband, you know,
Can I-
because nobody's checking it, no checks and balances while doing that. So then we haven't met our quota to help people like her who need that housing. And again, I think you're right, you know, having a cap on rent would stop a lot of these like landlord, people coming in and just building out of control, because they say, hey, we have rent control here. And then that also, yeah, gives an investment. I think that's a
People invest.
viable way to do it, right.
So this is,
Return based on what?
if you don't mind me jumping in, because I know we've been on this for a while. Attainable housing, again, this is a list of stuff that our team has spent an exorbitant amount of time trying to consider. And the purpose of this is like this discussion. So I think one of the takeaways that I'm having with this discussion is that we'll go back and see if we can come to the Planning Commission meeting next month and have a little bit more of a deeper discussion about it.
Are we here to discuss it though? Is this, decisions have already been made?
No. So this is,
Yes, we want to hear your input.
Let me-
That's the purpose of this.
I would say it's probably good to get the input out. Okay, we know that attainable housing is an
But they're not
issue.
even here, the people that we're talking to.
Well,
right?
we're taking notes and it'll be brought to them.
all right, real quick.
But also,
Let me stop right there. The purpose of this is conversational. The original goal of this was to have the decision makers here, of the people who are going to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, who would, in the event they decide, ultimately vote on this ordinance. That's the purpose of this.
Well, we have some time for that, right? People can have input.
We have lots of time for that. The Planning Commission was not able to meet a quorum tonight, which means there weren't enough people to actually have an official meeting. So we weren't allowed to have the meeting. That was last minute. We didn't know that. So we're having this, and we're still having this discussion because of this exact reason. We want to give opportunities for people to. We're not on a deadline. This isn't going to be passed tomorrow. It's going to be passed next week. It's not going to be passed next month. It's not going to be passed in 2 months. We have, I think, 6 to 8 public meetings in front of elected members or appointed members after this meeting. Attainable housing. We're gonna define it a little better. We're gonna talk a little bit better about it during the Planning Commission meeting next month, when people who were appointed by the Board of Supervisors are sitting on that row and you can talk to them. Data centers. All right, data centers. Let's
Can I
go.
talk about adaptive reuse? Just give me a
Oh, sorry,
slight break.
my bad. I jumped ahead of the game here. Let's get adaptive reuse out of the way, and then we'll move to data centers, because that's going to be a fun one.
Adaptive reuse. So this will probably be quick. These are provisions in particular for taking existing properties that have probably that are significant in the township that we would like to see remain, particularly those identified in the comprehensive plan as historical, and give more flexibility on how they're used, and options to add development that don't impact their presence in the community, so that to encourage them to remain as opposed to demolition and replacement. So, probably the largest example that I can think of in the township of that is like St. Gabe's, which is a feature that I think we all appreciate as something that's I mean, I'll throw my opinion in there. That's an architectural masterpiece that has a lot of opportunity for options on how it's developed. It was long zoned as single family, and that's all that could be done there, which means the building would come down. There are provisions in there that would allow development of that as it stands, with adding some additional features, as long as they didn't impact how you see it from the street, or how we have come to appreciate it as a community. So that's the basic gist of adaptive reuse. So, data centers. Which I will tell you, as a municipal solicitor, are most of my days and nights lately. So there are provisions for data centers in the draft that went out. We have been and part of this is, as you have been reviewing it, and I should have said this at the outset, but as you have been reviewing it, we've been re-reviewing it. Your fellow residents and property owners have been sending in their comments as well outside of these meetings, that we've been taking those comments in and reviewing. People who have active applications, property owners, have been sending in comments about, hey, what would this mean? And we've been taking that all in stride. One of the biggest things about that is data centers, and we're seeing what's happening or what's being discussed in surrounding townships, not only as far as Chester County, but also in Upper Merion and Plymouth and other areas close by. So we would anticipate that there will be in the marked up version in advance of July, based on the feedback we've been receiving, that there's going to be additional regulations for data centers. I think what we're seeing in here now is certainly a placeholder that limits the location of the data centers and the general proximity of them to any residences in the area. The regulations in this draft limit them to the industrial zones, which is a fairly restricted portion of the township. And has a extraordinary, I'm not going to go extraordinary, but an extraordinary setback for this use from any surrounding residential uses or residential zoning districts, to make sure that those impacts are mitigated. I know this is something no one likes, and the problem that we're set at right now is that the township and many surrounding townships are all looking at this and knowing that that same provision that I discussed at the outset, that we have to provide things, is kind of dangling over our heads. We have to provide for uses. And if it's not something that's specifically provided, there's two ways that can go. One is that it's something that's close enough to something that's already provided, or someone who wants to do that use can come in and challenge an ordinance and say, you have to provide this, and then we lose a bit of control. So no, I'm still on data centers. So right now, well, this goes hand in hand, I guess. Right now for data centers, we have a provision in here. We believe it can be beefed up based on the more information we're gathering every day on this brand new use. And I think all of us are hoping for a favor from Harrisburg that will give us a chance to not have to either further restrict these or approach data centers in a different way. But in the meantime, it's in here in a baseline restriction, and we're going to add to that during this process.
No, you're good. I just want to make sure that everyone's comments, the reason I'm running around here is because I want to make sure everybody's comments get on our recording.
Yep.
Gotcha.
That's helpful for
I
us,
appreciate
too.
it. We have in the township one of the major data centers probably in the Western Hemisphere. It's a 10-story building built underground and you would never know it exists except for seeing something that says PJM.
Yep.
Can this ordinance arm itself to force data centers literally underground for cooling and sound issues, as opposed to allowing things to go up to allow for noise and other pollutants coming in? So like the PGM is 10 stories down that controls energy flow in the country. And it's an amazing facility. It's in our industrial center.
Yep.
It's 10 stories underground.
Over there by 422?
Over there by 422. Right next to where the Commodore fabricating building is. That's a dead building over there. I'll be damned too. But we have a solution that we can we regulate it so that if we do get a data center, we plug it down in the ground.
I think that's a great comment and a great point. We have not discussed requirements for subterranean, and that's something that we would certainly have to look at, whether we can require that. But the regulations that we're looking at certainly require closed loop cooling and those systems, as well as eliminating the ability for data centers to connect to the grid, so there's not power generation problems, and other provisions about water draw and also water discharge from the site. So all of those things, but I think the underground subterranean aspect is a great point, and referencing PJM I think is
So
important in
you
that
guys haven't looked
conversation.
at subterranean at all?
We have not discussed that yet, but
Okay.
that's the point of
Are
these
you-
meetings.
Are you familiar with a concept of an earth ship? Do you know what that is?
I am not.
Okay.
Someone else might be, so.
Okay, an earth ship.
Anybody? Okay.
You talked about steep slope development and knocking stuff out there. Instead of knocking out steep slope development, you build into the slope, and you put tubing into the slope so you get your natural heating and cooling from the earth. 10 feet underground, temperature normalizes around here about 57 degrees. That means you put something on the ground that's built into a hill. And this is across the planet. We're kind of stupid the way we do things. I was in Greece last year, and I saw a lot of their buildings built into the hills, and they don't need as much energy for air conditioning or heating because they're just running a tube into the earth to bring the stuff back.
Yep.
And
it's an excellent idea, and I think it's a little beyond the ken of the people in the room
well,
at the
actually,
moment,
this is
and
the
that's why
time
we
to
have
put
to
it
do
in. If
research
you're
on
not
it.
doing
And I think we have
subterranean,
to.
now's the time to
I
put
think
it in.
we also
please.
have to consult with our contacts at DEP to see if that type of stuff is even feasible or possible to regulate. Because I'll say, as the lawyer in the room, if we create a regulation that is impossible to comply with, then we still have the same problem at the outset of even providing for it. But I think it's a great point. It's on our list. We will absolutely look into whether that's an option of something we can require, because I think it's an excellent idea.
You don't have to make it impossible, you just have to make it really expensive.
Well,
Really expensive.
the courts may disagree with you on that. So,
You gotta give the opportunity, if you got an opportunity here for data centers,
Yeah.
you gotta give an opportunity for subterranean.
but you have understood.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance.
I just wanted to ask if you had also put provisions in there for wildlife and parks. You know, like you have great things around here. You know, it does impact the wildlife.
Sure.
And I just want to make sure that that is something that is put in there.
Understood.
Regarding the movie lots, I live up there on Wilson Boulevard, and there's only basically 2 roads going in and out of there. With all them 100 movie lots, are there going to be provisions for roads, additional roads?
We can't require a single property owner to add additional roads. The movie lots are already laid out on a grid system with paper streets that would provide access. So if the access is not off of one of the roads, they would have to construct their own access on one of the paper streets to access the roads that exist there now. or another road wherever that access may take them. If someone's developing multiple lots, then we have an opportunity to require roads.
Yeah, because you only have 2 roads in there now.
Understood.
That's an awful lot of traffic on them 2 little roads.
Understood. There's a lot of, so fortunately over time, both the Commonwealth and the township have made efforts to purchase a lot of the movie lots, especially those that are contiguous with Evansburg State Park. And so when you're looking at the map, that kind of brighter green color that you see, that is all of Evansburg and everything on the south side of 422 down at the bottom of the map, and located throughout that bright green color, are all properties that are owned by the township, the county, or the Commonwealth, that have really, the recreational zone can only be used primarily for recreational purposes. And if any other movie lots are purchased that are contiguous with the park, I would certainly recommend that the township pursue an amendment to make sure they're zoned in the recreational zone as well.
The way it was explained to me through Rick Brown, who used to be a township manager, was that all the paper roads are actually part of the development. The paper roads belong to the people in that township, in that development, not the township. Now, a lot of the people that live there now have already put sheds on them and have been taking care of them for years. But not in there where all the movie lots they want to open up now.
This doesn't open up any movie lots. Every movie lot that is open for development has been a movie lot that's always been open for development. This doesn't change the ability. We litigated a property on Grange a couple years ago. It's now developed, but they wanted to build much more on that lot than the zoning allowed, or even we wanted to allow them, and that was something. But all those lots have always been privately owned and always could be developed.
There was no access.
Well, but, and I honestly, do you want to talk about paper streets maybe after the meeting? I don't know if I want to get back into the nuances of paper streets, but depending on, yes, they've been there for a long time. The township could not unilaterally go in and open a paper street today, go in and open the right of way. However, every abutting property owner who would end up having access over those paper streets to their property retains the right of that access over those paper streets. So if there is a lot in the back that would have to go over, 3 avenues that don't exist, they would have the right to construct their driveway over that length, because they have retained a fundamental property right to access their property. So it's a little more nuanced than maybe what a previous manager tried to surmise. But
I was just more concerned with access for all that they start opening them up.
Understood.
Instead of the 2 roads we got.
And do you mind if I jump in here?
Go ahead.
The goal of this is also to look not like 5 years from now. It's to 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, especially if the movie lots is a really good example, because that's probably something that isn't going to happen, even if we open this up, even if this gets approved on whatever time frame, October, November, December of this year. We're not going to turn around in 2028 and have half those movie lots be bought up. I mean, not most likely, I can't say for certain, but the goal is that over time, somebody puts a development in here, meaning a single family home or a twin or whatever, and then as that goes along, in coordination with the land development process, in coordination with our public works department, who plans out how they pave and open up streets and expand streets, it's an iterative process that will eventually make neighborhoods livable and not constrict it. Because to your point, you're right. Like if they went in there tomorrow and built 150 single family homes, they'd have 2 access roads. That's not really the intention. I don't think it's really the likelihood.
Nolan's been looking at them properties for a while.
Sure, but there's still a lot of hurdles, and that's kind of the purpose of this. So, Gary, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, did we move to transitional housing?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay,
Not yet.
Still on data centers, if there's
Still on
anything
data
else on
centers.
data centers.
But I think, is it fair to say that we're trying to very carefully restrict them?
Yes.
So, the data centers, yes.
Well,
Yeah, I would be careful what I say about that, but yes.
Anything else on data centers?
Anything else before we move on to transitional housing?
Okay.
Transitional housing.
Transitional housing. Yeah, I think
Drum roll, please.
I don't want to sound like a broken record. So you've all heard me say about providing for the uses. This in the performance standards that I discussed earlier, there is a page and a half of regulations, which is probably the most regulated use we have in this document related to transitional housing to ensure that the impact on the community, if one were to ever be located in Lower Providence, would be controlled. We are continuing to refine this. However, I do want to say as a precursor to any questions about the transitional housing portion is that any regulation that's in here would not permit any proposal that's already been proposed in the township. The same safeguards plus new ones that we identified when the last proposal came in are still in place, and this would not permit anything else. It just makes sure that it's provided and regulated so that a challenge that could have been an option cannot be levied against the township to force this use to go in places that would be inappropriate or adversely affect the surrounding properties or the township as a whole. So this is very targeted and highly regulated and does not open any doors for things that I know were of great discussion in the community over the last several years. Yes.
Let me get.
It's a really important clarification.
Yeah.
So to some extent, this and the preceding stuff about data centers and what have you, these are proactive measures you're taking in the new zoning ordinance structure to mitigate challenges and the state coming after you to say you don't provide this because you didn't specify it. So
Yes.
in some cases you're actually at least putting a framework in there to say you have at least accounted for it. In other cases, it's even stronger to say this is really mitigating problems we've seen in the past.
Yes. And almost
I know you're limited in what you can say because you're a counselor, but I'm just trying to put it in layman's terms.
No, that's a great way to explain it, and I wish I had had those words when I started this because I think that's a great explanation of what we tried to do. It's definitely a proactive approach, and there could be approach that would try to do more than is permitted, and that would only serve to, months after the board would ultimately adopt this to raise a challenge, and then we would be in a terrible litigation fight, which we don't want to put the township, the taxpayers, in that position. This is the proactive way to make sure that this would not have the impact that people feared.
An absence of it is a risk.
Yes.
Overly burdensome is a risk too.
Yes. It's both ways. Yeah. Yes, Brian. As soon as you have a microphone.
Hey, I was going to wait till the end of the meeting, but
You're welcome to sit. I have to
everybody's
stand. You don't
speaking
have
up, and this is an open, and we don't have to wait.
Yeah.
Transitional housing. So, from what I take that you just presented to everybody here in the room, the current legal challenges would not apply to any transitional housing rules, zoning, or so forth going forward. Is that correct?
Would the current challenges affect the future?
Well, would the current?
No.
Okay, presently we're in a lawsuit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I know you're not allowed to speak about it, and we probably aren't supposed to even really be talking about it here, but it's.
I can talk about it. I'll tell you when we can't.
Okay.
anymore.
Okay. Great. All right. All right. I'm just hypothetically thinking that if RHD drops their lawsuit, we pass this, they come right back in and apply for the exact same thing.
It would not. What they proposed under the initial application would still not be permitted under this application.
Okay.
Under this ordinance.
I understand exactly what you're doing now, and I really appreciate that we would have restrictions or limitations to transitional housing to limit it to 6 people or to limit the amount that we require here because we don't have any homeless people here now. We don't really have. I'd much rather see the money going towards this lady here. I really would, instead of the $2.3 million RHD wanted to get and absorb and use for homeless or whoever they wanted to place there from not Lower Providence. I'd rather see it be split up to tenants here. Okay? That's a much better application of money from the county instead of them forcing down our throats to take people from who knows where, okay? Could be from another city, could be from another country, wherever it's from, they could force it down our throats, and we are not allowed to ask where they come from. I've looked up all the laws, and I've spoken to several other attorneys concerning this. Okay? We cannot stipulate who they can put there if the program were to be approved in this township.
Correct.
Okay? We can't. Under HUD laws in Washington, I spoke to somebody in Washington, and you cannot discriminate against anybody from any country at the present time, unfortunately. Okay? The transitional housing thing, I would say we should adopt something, but we should definitely restrict it to say 6 people and no more, and make the other communities that are in Montgomery County absorb some of the exact same things that we would have to. That would be fairness across the county. Instead of Montgomery County dictating, and I know for a fact, it's being dictated as Lower Providence to be used as a guinea pig for this type of a program. Okay? Appreciate Mike's input from Gwyneth about the attainable housing and all that, and we do need attainable housing here. And we have over right now 500 empty homes in the township, according to the consensus in 2024. Okay? We could use those for some of this attainable housing. Work with the owners of those houses that have them empty. Say, hey, look, we can supplement, we can work. We have 500 empty units right now in this township that could be used for that particular thing. Or for some lady here, if her husband gets hurt on a job and they don't have income coming in, we could let them go there under supplemental real estate somehow. So, I mean, there are things here that we can do. Okay?
I have a question.
Sure.
Someone shared a document online. I printed it out, so I'm just going to read off of it.
Yeah.
It states that there's going to be a new institutional district proposed, or?
Nope.
Okay.
We currently have an institutional district.
We do?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in the area of the hospital, the Eagleville, the prison, the Eagleville Hospital, and the county facilities, just on the other side of Streamlight.
Okay. Never mind.
Yep. I believe we're excluding properties that never should have been zoned institutional, that are currently residential or are not used for institutional purposes. But no, it's not a new district.
Okay.
I think I know that the document you're referencing
Yeah.
was posted online, and I think that was a endeavor to utilize some tools out there to help understand a 220-page document. But I think the limitations of what data centers provide through AI, it shows, because there's a lot of inaccuracies in its analysis. So, but I'm happy to answer questions.
No. No, I'm talking about, because we're talking about transitional housing
Yep.
and treatment centers, they fall under institutional district. So if the hospital and the prison and the treatment center, Eagleville Hospital and the prison that's there, are considered transitional housing and treatment centers, we're fighting RHD because our community doesn't want that there, even though that is zoned for it there. Well, based on this, it says transitional housing, and it has a nice blurb of what that means. And then it has treatment centers, and it has a blurb of what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that the Eagleville Hospital and the prison fall under that zoning already in place.
Eagleville Hospital is currently institutional, yes.
And from my understanding, please correct me, I want to be, if I'm wrong, that the RHD plan wants to go to that space and do their programming there. And because of the zoning that's there, based on the zoning, they're able to do that. But we as a community are saying no.
No, that's not
Okay.
accurate. This is where we're getting into the things I don't necessarily want to or
Perfectly fine.
can delve into. But
I'm just
I
trying
will
to
say
understand.
that's not how it would work, and it's
Okay.
not how that's not the township's interpretation, and it's not how the zoning hearing board found.
Okay.
That's currently on appeal before the Court of Common Pleas. So that's about all I can say, but that's not quite it.
I appreciate it.
But like I said at the outset, what was proposed would fall under the same protections that we argued now under this proposed. So it's not like this would be adopted and RHD would have a shovel in the ground across the street.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay. No, I
yeah,
know. I'm
that's
just
not what I
I'm
was
just
saying.
reiterating
Oh,
that
okay. Okay.
as a general thing.
I have a question.
Yes.
Under this, it says, it's, under transitional housing, it says SE, right?
Yes.
SE means
Special
permitted with special exception approval.
Yes.
What does that mean exactly?
So a special exception is a use that is outlined in the township zoning ordinance that needs to receive a hearing from the zoning hearing board that the applicant has to prove that they meet all the requirements outlined in the the zoning ordinance before they are able to proceed with their project.
Can you repeat that? Like,
You want to take a different spin, Mike? And I'll tell you if you're wrong or not.
I'll take a
Potentially,
personal,
yes.
I'll take a personal spin on this, because basically anything that is permitted is something that can be, and I'm talking all the uses, anything that's permitted is generally something that myself or Hetty can sign off on administratively. Those things that have special criteria that we want to make sure are adhered to have to have a second approval, and that would be either a conditional use, which means that they have to go before the Board of Supervisors to get their approval. Staff can't approve those. Board of Supervisors approve those. Others, only difference being that they, instead of going to the Board of Supervisors, they are called special exceptions, which means that they have to go to the Zoning Hearing Board. So they can't be approved by any staff member. They have to automatically go to the Zoning Hearing Board, and they have to be approved on a case-by-case basis with all the criteria, all the notices, all the neighbors coming out. And so it's to give a secondary protection approval process.
And public scrutiny.
okay, I have another question. For this particular use, can you require there to be a police officer at the facility 24/7? I'm not talking a security guard. I'm talking about a professional police officer that has gone through training, that is able to be at that facility 24/7.
Let us look at that. I think that's definitely a legal question. I'm not going to touch that one.
Yeah, that's a nuanced answer. That
I'm just saying. I mean, that to
The-
me would be like a security blanket that could address some of the concern of these types of facilities.
so
And it would depend upon how big the facility is. I mean, if you're limiting it, how can you even limit the units going in something like this? Can you say that, okay, we're allowing 30 units and that's it?
yes,
Or we're allowing 10 units
we can
and that's it?
absolutely limit density through zoning. Yes, that's one of the primary goals of zoning is to limit density
So-
after regulating use.
But I don't know. To me, you know, the security of a facility like this, I think should be paramount. Like,
I think it's certainly a paramount concern. Requiring the township cannot require a property owner to pay for an individual police officer to only attend to one property. There's a whole host of issues with that, but like I said, there's a nuanced conversation about that.
yeah, I just got the idea because I know that now this is a completely different area, but at Temple University they have their own police force. Not only do the Philadelphia Police Department
patrol the area, but Temple has its own police force, given the area.
But that's not a requirement.
I know, it's not a requirement,
Yep.
but that's what Temple University does.
Temple has chosen to have their own police force and go through the certification and training and get jurisdictional permission to establish a police force. That's their endeavor.
Why put yourself in that spot?
Why put yourself in that spot to have a police?
That one is in there in the first place.
I think that in the event that it gets granted anyway, that, you know, they're in court right now. But anyway, I'm asking the question, and he
Understood.
answered, we can't require it.
Just in case I wouldn't give up your file. Your personal file.
So I have a question. In the previous code, I believe, wasn't there some provision for you can't have certain business with another, or a certain distance of another business? Is that true? And was that taken out of this one?
I'm sorry?
Like, I thought, I'll have to look back in the old code, but adult stores, I don't think you could have one that was within 500 feet or
Yeah.
something like that with another.
Yeah, we have
So
it for
that's in
smoke
here for
shops,
smoke
and we
shops.
have it for there, and there are different regulations that apply for adult uses, certainly. But
I'm bringing that back
that
to
is a thing.
transitional housing.
Yeah.
Can we apply that to also
It's
institutional uses?
certainly a suggestion. Yeah.
Because
We'll
right
take a look
now,
at
the
it.
way I'm reading the transitional housing code or section, it seems that the Eagleville Hospital, if they subdivide it, and it was a 5-acre parcel that they subdivided off, they could easily put transitional housing there, 60 beds.
Understood.
60 beds per facility, and doesn't say how many facilities there can be.
Yeah, there's already been, and I, in all fairness, there's already been some modifications to this.
Okay.
Based on feedback, and so hopefully when we provide a red line, you'll see some of those changes as well.
Okay. As long- yeah.
Overwhelming portion of the citizens don't want it, so I
Oh.
don't know if you find a way to.
I sat through all those hearings with you, so I'm aware.
I'm just reminding you.
I was there.
You know, I gotta find a way to make it.
And just to be clear, we are going to be providing a red line that will
Yes.
probably
It'll be
incorporate
posted.
many of these discussions before the July meeting. So
of
everything
time
that we've
left
talked
in
about
middle
tonight and up to now will be incorporated in a red line version that you'll see before the July Planning Commission meeting.
ADUs? Okay, ADUs are accessory dwelling units. We have provisions for ADUs in the township already. We call them mother-in-law suites or in-law suites. This expands that a bit. This is an initiative that is fairly is becoming fairly commonplace to allow small additional dwelling units on single-family properties to provide for multifamily, multi-generational living, or just add density in places to provide more housing options. We have separate regulations for short-term rentals, so this doesn't create an Airbnb rush or anything of that sort. This is to provide additional options for housing stock and with a primary focus on multi-generational living.
Have you seen like an influx of people wanting that, so you do residents?
Yeah. There's people who, you know, especially seniors who want to stay in the township and aren't necessarily looking to either live in a there's nothing against it, but who don't want to live in a community like Shannondale or need a more affordable option, who want to be close to relatives. It's a great option to provide a accessible and well-designed place for them to be and have support with while still maintaining independence. It also allows, you know, it allows options for people, and we've seen a lot of applications based on how we regulate in-law suites now to expand upon this, and generally the zoning hearing board hasn't had an issue with it, and I think that it's something the Board of Supervisors saw an opportunity for. It's not Airbnbs. Yep, we don't want. That's not what we want. Yep. Yep. Floodplain. This is. Yes.
In the special matrix,
In chapter 8,
yeah,
the colors.
number 43.
Okay, thank you. That's exactly how we want you to use it.
Yes. 43. May or may not be in a separate structure, excluding manufactured homes. Can you explain that?
So manufactured homes are a particular use. They have to provide it in a particular way. We have a manufactured home park district, which is where manufactured homes are to be located, and so placing a manufactured home kind of as an accessory dwelling unit is not something that was seen as desirable.
So if someone buys like a shed, and it's a she shed that turns into a ADU that someone wants to live in, that's unacceptable.
I would look at the definition of manufactured home in particular, but not to get into nitty gritty, but like a shed to transition that to a dwelling unit would probably not pass the building codes based on how a shed is constructed versus the requirements for a habitable dwelling unit.
Okay.
But it's basically not a trailer in the backyard.
Sure, but if some manufacturer starts making ADUs that are manufactured, is that different?
And I do want to say there's a difference between a manufactured home and a prefab dwelling. There is a difference. So it's just kind of a definitional thing. And yes, it could be a tiny home, but also tiny homes are constructed on site sometimes. So it's all about definitions. So has to meet the code. Yes. But it's not the idea that if you're living in a single family detached dwelling area and someone's going to pull a trailer into the backyard and put it there. We recognize that there may be some sensitivities, and that wouldn't be consistent with the existing character of our neighborhood. So it was trying to make sure that there was an expectation that it should meet the character of the neighborhood going forward. Okay. Floodplain. Floodplain is very straightforward. We've actually, instead of having these overlay districts in certain areas, or the entire township is overlaid with a special services district called a natural resources conservation district that regulates floodplain, steep slopes, and other environmentally sensitive areas. I think I talked about this earlier when we were talking about the rezoning of the map. We focused on placing properties within the floodplain of the Perk and closer to the Schuylkill with LDR, which is our large lot single-family residential, to make sure that those lots are not being overdeveloped, and also the different additional regulations for the floodplain in the NCR, the NRC, National Resources Conservation District, to ensure that we're not seeing harmful development practices, both on the environment and for the safety of residents. So we're continuing to protect the floodplain at the what I would think would be the highest level.
We could then say that like you're allowing more coverage with, buildings are a lot bigger on the lots that they're on, right? So and that's going to cause more flood damage. Also,
But if they're
is it true that they're changing the moderate for they want to charge R2 and they want to change the non-residential front yard from to 25 feet from 75 feet? That does make a big difference with floodplains as well.
So floodplains and stormwater are two different things.
Yeah, I'm thinking more stormwater.
So floodplains are actually the areas around existing bodies of water that can flood and that cause hazard to existing properties and homes. The stormwater, we are changing some of the yards, particularly in the MDR, because those were the result of that 2006 rezoning where it sought to constrict everybody's property into a point where a large amount of housing stock in the R2 currently is non-conforming, which means their houses it made their houses too big for the property, even though they were developed in a conforming manner. So this was taking stock of all the applications that we've seen over the last 20 years, and also going back to that pre-2006 and finding a balance there to make sure that people who are living in the MDR are appropriately zoned with their setbacks. Now, when it comes to stormwater, our coverages still remain at an acceptable level based on the township engineer, that just because we're changing the setbacks, the yard requirements, doesn't mean that you can cover any more of your property with what's called impervious coverage.
This is the non-residential. The non-residential front yards that you changed it? Is it being changed from 75 feet to 25 feet? So
That all depends on the district, so I can't
that's-
make
it
a
says
blanket
it's in-
statement on non-residential.
that's one of the things it's saying for R2.
Is this the,
For the non-residential things that are in R2. Because that makes a lot of difference for sound and for light.
in my
it does
chart
for
in
the
MDR,
stormwater.
for non-residential primary uses, a front yard is 50 feet, which is the same as a dwelling served by public water and sewer, so.
Okay. That's why I said it wasn't.
Yeah, it's
I didn't know
consistent.
If it was 25, it was going from 75 to 25 was a big difference.
Right,
That's
no,
why I said,
yeah.
if it's going to 50, that's different. Okay.
The only smaller front yard in the MDR is in the OSR, which is a use, it's called open space, what's the R? I forget what the R is. It's basically what would be referred to as a cluster option, where you allow the houses to be built on slightly smaller lots in exchange for reserving additional common open space. So it groups the houses over here and provides more open space area, as opposed to that open space being divided up across several lots. So that allows a smaller front yard, yeah.
Yeah, since you brought it up, in MDR, formerly R2, you folks may recall back in 2019, there was the village housing that was put into off of Church Road, the infamous Bella Circle now. And at that time, actually, I was the guy that authored the letter to the township board of the inconsistencies and conflictions that existed in the zoning ordinance by that adoption that went through, which is essentially the R5 village housing zone that was snuck into the R2 for those 4 parcels of land, essentially hardwired for that 11.1 acres of R2 on Church Road. And I'm only commenting on that now because you made the comment that a lot of R2 has the jumbo McMansions that are no longer in conformance with the lots they're in. But the reality is what was done in the village housing there on Church Road is actually the opposite. Now the lots are a third of that size and, you know, much, much closer and higher packed density. And there was no sacrifice for open space land in that.
Yeah, so I can't speak directly to how that went down. I wasn't here. But just to clear up, the MDR, the R2, is the vast majority of our long-standing housing stock. So not the McMansions. That most of those are located in what is now the R1. 2 things functionally. So the older housing stock was actually downzoned in a way that made, you know, your houses that were built in the 60s and 70s bigger than zoning allowed, even though they were properly developed at the time and had been fine for years and years and don't take up that much of their property. The zoning got so constrictive that it gave those property owners in the vast majority of the township a non-conforming situation, which makes them come to the zoning hearing board every time they want to do something. These R4s, R5s, and the overlays and those type of things, that was part of our goal in reducing us from 23 to 12 districts, is to get rid of those little pockets and unify the zoning in most of the township between the R1 and the R2 to ensure that those opportunities for pocket development aren't there anymore. It maintains the character of the areas if it's consistently zoned, and that was what we were trying to accomplish there.
Okay, so under that scenario, if somebody had a traditional R2 property and it was not worth doing renovations on it or whatever, they decide to demolish that, could they put 2 units back on that same plot in the style of the R5 village housing, because it's now all in the same zone?
So it's hard to answer these things in the abstract because there's so many factors about lot size and frontage and lot width and everything. But if they were to take down one of these, let's just call them oversized houses or however you want to describe them, and they were to apply for a permit, they would have to comply with the code as it exists when they apply for that permit. So they would be in compliance with the MDR going forward, not what it was developed as in 2012.
Okay. Well, I just, like I said, that lot
R5
side is
gone.
yeah, the
When
R5
if this
is,
were to get enacted, the R5 is gone.
so no more lots of that small
Yeah.
in MDR.
So we'll recognize that those couple of quirky things, those may be the non-conforming ones now, but they are the ones that are out of place in the character of the neighborhood. We're getting it back to what the majority of the neighborhood is zoned as.
I know it was rescinded immediately thereafter. That it was ordinance 660.
So those, even today, then, if that was rescinded, then they would have to redevelop as R2. After this were to be enacted, they'd have to redevelop as MDR. They don't get the benefit of those R5
Thank you.
regulations anymore. Yes.
So, looking at the zoning map, the Eagle Stream Apartments there, is that in the R5 area? Is that what it was?
Which one's Eagle? Is Eagle Stream right down the hill? Yeah. So I believe those are included within the VC going forward?
Nope.
No?
No. That is. That's in the MDR.
This is this one in the MDR?
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Why is that? It just seems inconsistent unless it complies with the open space OSR section.
It's MDR on the map.
It's MDR on the map, but I don't know if that's the reason the OSR that has the minimum lot size of 10 acres.
Though. OSR is single family.
I don't know.
We're gonna take a look at it.
Great.
I remember us having a conversation about it. I don't remember why it was done that way at this point, because that has been about 2.5 years at this point, but we will go back and look at that. I think that's a fair comment.
And then, since I'm looking at the zoning map,
Okay.
Where we're at right now is in village commercial. Why is this not recreation? Or not village commercial, village center, sorry. Township building, Eagleville Elementary.
And also, it's a fairly big park. It has,
Yeah.
you
You
have
got courts,
fields
football
here.
fields, baseball
Why-
fields.
Baseball fields, why is that all village commercial?
I have a map in this one.
Yeah, and village center, if at some point when the police station moves,
It's not village commercial.
Village center, yeah, village center, but it would allow lots of residential spaces to go in here if you decide to sell it. So why not protect it in the zoning as a recreation?
It's a fair point.
Similar to the, since I'm looking at the zoning map again, Shannondale, that had or across the street from Shannondale had the open space institutional overlay, or not open space, it was institutional overlay, and now it's changing to village commercial, village center.
Which portion are you referencing?
Near the Rite Aid.
So adjacent to Audubon Square?
Sure.
Yeah. So that I can tell you is intentional. That's part of a unified development. And if it was overlay, then it would. I don't have the old zoning map. I can't do a
believe it
compare and
was
contrast off the top of
IP.
my head. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just asking why it is changing to village center instead of
Like
something else.
If homes eventually go there, we all, I think, are aware of the traffic on Trooper Egypt. So that's not helping our community at all.
Without infrastructure.
Correct. And we don't have the infrastructure. Traffic's already backed up out the wazoo on both of those roads.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess just an explanation of why is that just a push from landowners saying we want to put high-rise apartments?
So that part of the township, starting with the village center at the point there, continues down and gradually transitions through Park Point, from that commercial and maybe this is the transition to this ROC development, just the last on the list, the residential office commercial, which is that identifying those mixed-use areas in the township that can support or want to support the commercial, retail, and maybe higher density dwelling areas of the township to create that village area as it's already being developed. So that goes from there. The next, the hot pink, which is the next district down, is the commercial mixed use, or the CMU. That is more of office park, but it has more of a commercial retail feel that has those businesses that like Bald Birds or the coffee roastery or the pickleball place that are generally publicly accessible and support the, and interact with the retail and commercial spaces. And then when you get down to the IMU, which is kind of the more purple shade, where PJM is, and I believe Coachworks is in there, and some of the more industrial properties. That's our light industrial area. That's more of the adjacent to the highway, somewhat removed. And I know it's already existing, so that one area up Autobahn Road that is MDR is not completely removed behind the golf course, but it's closer to the highway and providing some slightly more intense uses, but still provides an interaction with the CMU. So that's part of that gradient going down of providing kind of that integrated mixed use area all the way from the industrial mixed use up to the village center,
Sure, but all
including
these,
housing in that area.
Yes, but all these changes aren't going to say that the infrastructure or roads or parking is going to be sufficient at the time of releasing this, when someone could be.
So if you're talking about that parcel in particular,
Yes.
if that were to be developed in there, that's not what we were talking about before, where we're not going to require people to have roads. That would be that would be some type of, most likely under this, a mixed use development that would require infrastructure improvements, probably in multiple ways and directions, to ensure that it's just not, that the impact is being absorbed to some extent. And that's what that's a kind of, go ahead. He's just keeping one for fun.
It's on. I know, looking at the map, I'm looking at Audubon School, I'm looking at Arcola, I'm looking at I'm looking at our educational institutions. They all appear to be now residential.
So
it used to be an overlay, wasn't it? Public facility
Yes.
overlay.
But they're residential underneath. So they've always been residential. The educational facilities, K-12 in particular, are permitted in the residential districts because there's a philosophical position that schools are meant to be where residents are located. So to not how do I explain this?
Protect?
Well, no, it's not overprotect, but it's to allow the schools to go where people live.
Right, and my comment is, I'm looking at Audubon School, which is now not a school. That's primed to be R2'd, is what I'm afraid of.
I believe.
Adaptive
Do we have a hearing on
reuse.
that? Do we have a hearing on that yet?
We're going to be having a hearing on that.
Yeah,
There's already a proposal for residential for that property
all right,
already.
so will our zoning protect us from this type of development taking over our former schools? Because that was government property. That was public property, and the same thing for Arcola. These are large tracts of land that we need to protect long-term. And as you said, philosophically, we should have schools within walking distance for our kids. Allowing that to happen, allowing development to happen on public property like this, I think flies in the face of that philosophy.
But the existing schools, if we were to zone the existing school properties exclusively for educational use,
sounds great.
We are not the school district. The school district is a different property owner, and then the school district has an issue with us in the long run if they decide that a school does not function there any longer. So it becomes overly restrictive in the other way
But we
to the
need
detriment of.
I would
of the
argue,
community.
as a citizen of the township, that we need those restrictions and protections for those properties, as open space, as whatever.
Us regulating that as a school does not prevent the school district from not operating as a school anymore.
That's fine, but.
And then if it
we can
ceases
leave it
to
open.
operate as a school, but then if our regulations force the district to not do something with the property, because they are viewed as any other property owner, they could have a claim against the township as a taking, and then we're on the hook for the property.
Actually, we're not getting any tax revenue from that plot at this point, so they're not getting any benefit out of it.
We can't.
Well,
yeah, it could be considered a taking. We would be responsible to purchase the property at fair market value if they were to allege that we took all of our rights out from the property.
Say that again?
So
I know, we
for
should
a
have.
prime example, those type of regulations that restrict a property in a way that limits someone so far that they can't do anything with the property is the King of Prussia Town Center. I'm sure we have all been there or have driven by, because you can't miss it on 422.
Right.
That was a golf course, right? The township, many years ago, Upper Merion Township tried to regulate that to a point that it was undevelopable and unusable just by the zoning regulations. That went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, and the result of that was a decree that came down that property was then developed without the benefit of any zoning regulations. If you go down there, you notice the parking spaces are small. You notice that the roads aren't wide enough. You notice that the everything is tight. That the buildings are this far away from each other and much higher than anything else in
And it's
Upper
all
Merion,
built on
except for
limestone that's going to collapse at some point.
Absolutely, but that is the result of over-regulating something. Then it can't be used for anything else. And the township was then either on the hook to either purchase that at the value of its developable value, potential, its developable potential, not as a golf course anymore, but as its developable potential, or allow them to move forward. But it went two ways, that they had to allow them to move forward because of the action they took in over-regulating, and then the township also couldn't afford to buy it because it was so many millions at that point. So we don't want to, terribly, so we don't want to put the township in that position. I understand what you're saying about keeping the schools. I think for the land that Methacton, I would just proffer that the land that Methacton has in the township is, with the exception of the Audubon School, which was a old facility, probably going to utilize their properties in the township for education for quite some time. But I understand your point.
It would be safer to zone it residential than commercial.
Yes, so they're all residential now.
Again, you would generate less traffic if it's residential versus commercial. That's obvious. So residential is the best bet that the school district should use, because then when it turns over, it can't be commercial. You can't put a Walmart there.
Let's hope not. So, I think we have another slide. Been on this one for 2 minutes. So I'm going to run through the how to use very quickly. So we talked about all these. It says Article 2, but you look at the zoning map, you find your property, you know what district you're in. The first place you go is Article 8. Article 8 is that matrix, the colorful matrix we talked about. You find either your zoning district and see what uses are permitted in your zoning district, or you find the use that you want to put there and you determine if it's permitted in that zoning district. The next is Article 9, so it's just the next section. You go to the zoning district standards. That will tell you your dimensional requirements, so your setbacks, your impervious coverage, your height regulations, and some additional requirements that may be applicable just to that district. And then you go to Article 10, the very next chapter, and that's the performance standards. That's what we talked about at the outset, that are the very specific uses, the very specific regulations for each individual use. So if you want to do, every time I try to do an example of this, I flounder, but if you want to do I got to prepare this next time. If you want to do retail, which is use 92 in the matrix in Article 8, it tells you what retail is. The definition's right there. You'll see that it's permitted in the historic village, the village center, the business corridor, the commercial mixed use, and the industrial mixed use, and under certain regulations within the recreational area. So now you know where it's permitted. Then you go to, let's say you want to do it in the village center, you go to Article 9, you look up village center, and you see exactly how much you find retail, which is in one of these columns. The first column underneath village center, it requires a 15,000 square foot minimum lot area, a 75-foot lot width, 25-foot front yard, et cetera. Maximum impervious 50%. So you know your dimensional regulations. Then you go to Article 10. You go to use 92, number 92 under performance standards, because it was use 92 in the use matrix. It's also it's number 92 in the performance standards, and there you have your particular regulations for retail. So that just kind of gives you the walkthrough on how to use the zoning ordinance. Mike, can we click next? Thank you. Next steps. I think this is my last slide. So this is the outline. Obviously, we've talked a lot tonight about this outline and how this may proceed. So back April 1st, we did a final presentation that the Board of Supervisors said they wanted it on an agenda for a public discussion. That was May 21st. The Board of Supervisors meeting, when I did this presentation at the Board of Supervisors meeting, slightly shorter, and the Board of Supervisors authorized the approval to move the proposal to move forward to the Planning Commission for review. The County Planning Commission is also currently reviewing this document. We have not yet received their comments, so we will hopefully receive them in the next week or two, they've been telling us, so that the Planning Commission will have our Planning Commission will have the benefit of reviewing them at the July Planning Commission meeting. As you can see, our first public meeting was tonight for the Planning Commission, so it's not a public meeting. We're calling this Town Hall number 1 at this point. And then the Planning Commission will review this and offer their feedback, as well as receive more of your comments and feedback at the July 22nd Planning Commission meeting. So the rest of this timeline, it was going to go back to the Board of Supervisors in August. That was going to be the idea was that was going to be a specially scheduled meeting, similar to this format, where the board themselves could hear your comments in more of a town hall forum, as opposed to just in a strict hearing format. And then once they received those comments, we would put the document in a final version. It would go to the Board of Supervisors at a following meeting for authorization to advertise. That triggers the formal process where we have to put it in the paper, send out proper notices for certain reasons, and post it on the agenda. And then the final is a public hearing, which is a presentation again, as well as an opportunity for the public to offer their final comments before the board decides whether to adopt the new ordinance and zoning map or not. This was the plan in April and May. We're at our first public meeting, and we obviously had a little hiccup that we discussed tonight. So we'll convene in July with the Planning Commission on the 22nd, fingers crossed, and then we'll reevaluate how this needs to move forward. Like Paul said a couple times, if the Planning Commission needs another meeting, if the Planning Commission needs another 2 meetings before they're comfortable and make a recommendation, this timeline will be adjusted. But the rest of this process, other than us making revisions and posting them, the intention is to post them in red line on the website when there's a new draft, is public. The rest of these meetings are public, and everybody is invited to come out and take an opportunity to review, offer your comment, offer your concerns, and until this is seen as cooked to the point where it can't be cooked anymore, and it's presented to the Board of Supervisors to decide if they are ready to serve it.
So just to reiterate, this is just an example so everyone understands the process. I just want to say it in different words to make sure it's clear.
Absolutely.
That we're not holding to these dates. It does not mean that September and October are definitively going to be the dates that these things are going to be considered for authorization or considered be for adoption. I use the word considered because that's what it is. It does not. These things are not set in stone. We are trying very hard as a staff to make sure we are as communicative as possible. We want to make sure that this process is as open as possible. So please we are posting stuff on the website every week. We are making sure that we are trying to do our best to communicate the information that might be the most relevant to you in an information series. We are also all open to meet with, talk with, email back and forth with anybody that has specific questions that want to get into the nitty-gritty. We're here. The door's open. Our emails we will respond. So I just want to make sure that's clear that we are going to make sure we communicate every opportunity that you have to share whatever your thoughts are as we go through this process and the timeline as it gets adjusted.
I think that's the last slide, right?
That's it. All right. So I am going to say this has been a long night. So if you do have comments, I think we've had a lot of comments tonight, to keep them brief, and then we'll wrap it up for the evening.
One thing I want to say is thank you to everybody that came out tonight. I don't think and I want to especially thank the lady that came here that's on the board. I'm sure she was not the only one that was available, but she's the only one that showed up. So thank you very much for that. Also, I want to I know that legally you could have just called a meeting and sent everybody home, which would have been a waste of time for everybody here. And we all appreciate you listening to us. As a community together in Lower Providence, you at least have an open ear on scenarios that we want our community to be. So that's an important thing. So many times there's a blind eye or a dead ear or deaf person that doesn't want to hear community input. It's the most important issue in the United States right now is community input, okay? And I'm going to say this because I don't think we should be dictated by the county unless they're willing to spread the entire agenda across all the communities of the county. Okay, that's the most important thing for everybody here to remember. We can't be the whipping person for the county. Okay, and I know that several people might not agree with me, and we all have empathy for people that are losing their homes. I'm a senior citizen. My wife and I are on Social Security, and I do have a small pension, but still, it's expensive to live here. Very expensive. Like, I had to pay my taxes late because I didn't have all the money to pay it. So, and I'm being honest. I mean, it sucks, We haven't had a new car in 30 years. We're driving, my wife's car is a 2007. I have a nice truck I bought used, but it's still 14 years old. So, I mean, we're struggling here. This lady here obviously is struggling, and there's a lot of the community that are in her situation and my situation. Yeah. We need affordable housing. Real quick. We need affordable housing here. But it's a shame that the Board of Supervisors didn't look at that when they allowed 2,000 units to go in this township that start at $4,000 a month. They should have thought about this in 2006 and limited what happened from 2006 to now. I don't want to, where there's 2,000 living units at right now. Okay. They start at $4,000. My wife and I would love to go there and live because we both have some poor mobility issues that we're dealing with now. We have a 2-story house. So this may benefit me being able to build a laundry room on the first floor or doing something like that. So thank you very much for at least not saying, oh, we're not having any meeting. We don't want to hear anybody's input. Go home. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. All right. Very quick. Yeah.
Real quick, just had a procedural question. So should this, at the end, get approved, what's the effective date that it goes, since it is pretty dramatic, what's effective date and grandfather, things that are going through the zoning board and all that?
So the effective date would be immediately upon approval.
Okay.
However, anything that is already being processed under the existing zoning ordinance is processed under the existing zoning ordinance.
That's what I figured. I just want to confirm. One last
question.
question. Is there any overlays under the new one?
There's only one. We're not calling them overlays, but it's the special district, and that's the Natural Resources Conservation District, and that overlays the entire township.
Right.
So it's not a mapped overlay, so you won't see, crosshatch or some type of pattern. It applies to the entire township where those conditions exist, because those are floodplains, steep slopes, wetlands, those type of things, and they can be anywhere. So us mapping them could be a problem. Could be we could miss things, and then environmentally sensitive areas could be impacted. The other thing is that a lot of those regulations depend on regulatory bodies that we don't control, like FEMA, that will map or change their maps, and we don't want to have them mapped and then not be able to adapt quick enough to ensure that those sensitive areas are protected. So that's why it just relies on the other regulating bodies that have jurisdiction, and then we apply our regulations.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
Quick one, since we're all here. I saw a building height requirement of 90 feet in ROC, but don't see building height anywhere else. Is that just an oversight? Oh, typically in the old one it was 35 feet for residential. I don't see that.
Yeah, I believe it's in there, and I just think we have to pinpoint where it is to answer that question easily. After the beauty, to be honest with everybody, the beauty of this part of the public process, and I appreciate Brian's comments, and I do want to give a shout out to Paul for ensuring that this meeting went forward tonight, is that we as a working group have been looking at this for 3 years, and honestly, as thorough as we wanted to be, sometimes the lines blur together. And the having the public input and your scrutiny allows us to get back there and make sure these things are plain and easy to read. So if your review, if you're not able to find the building height, then that's something that we should make sure is in a more accessible place, and we'll go back and take a look at that.
Great. I think with that, thank you very much for coming out. This has been a fun night. Can't wait to do it again.